She just beat a defending Wimbledon champion. Now Alex Eala is stepping onto a completely new battlefield, and the date is finally confirmed. For most athletes, a moment like that would be the peak of a career. For Alex Eala, it's starting to look like just another step. Because barely 3 weeks after making history at the All England Club, the rise continues. And this time, it's happening on a completely different surface in a completely different country. Against a field that reads like a murderer's row of Grand Slam champions. To understand how big this next chapter really is, you have to understand what she just walked away from. At Wimbledon this year, Alex Eala didn't just have a good tournament. She had the best Grand Slam run of her entire career. She opened with a straight-sets win over Renata Zarazua. She survived a brutal, momentum-fueled battle against Maya Joint, a player fresh off eliminating Serena Williams in a stunning upset of her own. And then in the third round, she did something no result in her career had ever quite matched. She beat Iga Swiatek, the defending Wimbledon champion, in a result that instantly became the signature win of her career. It marked her first-ever victory over a top-10 opponent at a major tournament, and it turned her from a promising name into a legitimate threat on tour. Her run finally ended in the fourth round, a hard-fought 3-set loss to Jasmine Paolini, ranked inside the world's top 15. But by the time it was over, the record books had already been rewritten. Alex Eala became the first player from the Philippines in history to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam. She pushed her ranking to a career high inside the world's top 30. And she did it all as a rising star still just 21 years old, with what many analysts now believe is a much bigger ceiling still ahead of her. That's usually where a story like this pauses. A breakthrough moment, a wave of celebration, a chance to catch her breath, a hero's welcome back home. But rise stories don't work that way for athletes who are serious about the next level. There's no time to sit still. Barely 3 weeks after walking off center court, Eala is already stepping into her next test. And this one comes with almost none of the comfort or familiarity of the surface that just made her a household name back home. The tournament is the Citi Open, staged at the William H.G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center in Washington, D.C. It's a WTA 500-level event, one of the most competitive rungs on the entire tour calendar, and for Eala, it marks something new entirely, her very first appearance at this tournament. And her first real test on hard courts since the emotional high of Wimbledon faded. Grass rewards instinct and aggression, low bounces and quick decisions. Hard courts reward something different entirely: precision, patience, physical endurance over long, grinding rallies that can stretch across baseline exchanges, lasting far longer than anything grass typically produces. It's an entirely different puzzle, and she's stepping into it with almost no time to adjust her rhythm, her footwork, or her tactical instincts. And the field waiting for her in Washington is no gentle re-entry. This is not a tournament designed to ease a rising star back onto tour after the biggest win of her career. The entry list includes former world number 1 Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion who needs no introduction and whose power game has troubled far more experienced players than Eala. It includes Elina Svitolina, a former top 3 player and one of the most experienced, tactically savvy competitors on the entire circuit. It includes Marta Kostyuk, Madison Keys, Leylah Fernandez, Clara Tauson, Anna Kalinskaya, Diana Nader, and perhaps most notably of all, Jasmine Paolini, the very same player who ended her Wimbledon run just weeks earlier. If the draw lines up that way again, Eala could find herself staring across the net at unfinished business almost immediately, with no time at all to process what a rematch so soon after that heartbreak might feel like. This is the part of her rise that often gets overlooked in the celebration of a big win. Beating a champion once proves you belong in the conversation. Doing it again, or at least proving that result wasn't a fluke, on a different surface, against a murderer's row of Grand Slam winners, is what turns a breakthrough moment into a career. The tennis world has seen plenty of players produce one stunning result, and then quietly fade back into the pack once the spotlight moves on, unable to sustain the level that made headlines in the first place. The real test of a rise like this one isn't the signature win. It's what comes right after it, whether the belief that comes from beating a legend can survive contact with an entirely new set of dangerous opponents on a surface that doesn't forgive mistakes the way grass sometimes does. There's a psychological piece to this too, one that rarely gets talked about outside locker rooms and coaching staffs. Athletes who produce a career-defining win often face an invisible kind of pressure in the tournament right after it, not from the opponent across the net, but from the weight of their own result. Suddenly, expectations shift. Casual fans who tuned in during the Wimbledon run are watching again, wondering if lightning can strike twice. Opponents who might once have overlooked her are now scouting her matches more closely, adjusting their game plans specifically around the player who took down a defending champion. Commentators start comparing every match to that one signature win, creating a kind of shadow that follows a player from tournament to tournament until a new result finally steps out of it. That's the hidden cost of a breakthrough. It changes how the entire tour sees you, whether you're ready for that shift or not. But if there's one thing her career so far has shown, it's that Alex Eala tends to respond to pressure rather than shrink from it. This is, after all, a player who has already proven she can beat elite opponents when the moment is biggest, not once, but multiple times against multiple top 10 players over the past year. Her rise hasn't been built on one lucky week. It's been built gradually, tournament by tournament, each result adding another layer of proof that her ceiling is higher than most people initially believed. And that rise has a longer arc than just this season. Just over a year ago, as a wildcard entrant with far less experience and almost no name recognition outside dedicated tennis circles, she stunned the tennis world with a run to the semifinals at a WTA 1000 event in Miami. A run that included back-to-back wins over top 10 opponents and made her the first player from the Philippines ever to reach that stage of a tournament that size. It was the moment her name first crossed over from niche tennis circles into mainstream sports conversation. The first time casual fans back home started paying attention to a sport that had never really belonged to them before. Since then, the rise has been remarkably consistent. A maiden tour-level final, her first WTA 125 title, a career-high world ranking, and now the deepest Grand Slam run of her life. Each chapter builds on the one before it. Nothing about this feels accidental, and nothing about it feels like a ceiling has been reached yet. What makes the CD Open particularly interesting isn't just the level of competition, it's the timing. Coming just 3 weeks after Wimbledon, this tournament sits in a strange, high-stakes window, too soon for the emotional high of that fourth-round run to have fully faded. But early enough in the North American hardcourt swing that a strong result here could set the tone for the rest of her season, including the looming presence of the US Open just weeks away. Win big in Washington, and the story becomes undeniable. This isn't a young player who got hot for 2 weeks in London. This is a genuine top-tier competitor whose rise is only accelerating. Someone building a full-season narrative rather than chasing a single highlight reel moment. Struggle here, and a different, more familiar tennis narrative starts to creep in: the post-breakthrough letdown, the difficult transition to a new surface. The reminder that even the best young players hit turbulence right after their biggest results. It's happened to talented rising stars before, across every era of the sport. The margin between building on a breakthrough and stalling right after one is often razor-thin. Decided by a handful of points in a handful of matches played under a very different kind of pressure than the one that created the breakthrough in the first place. A missed break point here, a slow start there. And suddenly the conversation shifts from what's next to what happened. There's also the physical dimension of this transition that rarely gets enough attention. Wimbledon, by its nature, is a short, intense burst best-of-3 matches on a surface that rewards quick points and doesn't demand the same brutal cardiovascular grind as extended hardcourt rallies. Jumping from that rhythm into a WTA 500 hardcourt event just 3 weeks later asks a completely different question of the body. Recovery windows shrink, training camps get compressed. There's barely enough time to adjust footwork patterns built for slick grass into the deeper, more explosive movement hard courts demand. Every top player and every coaching staff has to manage that transition carefully, and how well Eala's team has handled it behind the scenes may end up mattering just as much as her form on the day. That's what makes this next chapter genuinely compelling, beyond just the excitement of watching a rising star continue to climb. It's a real test with real stakes against a real murderer's row of proven champions, on a surface that will expose any weakness far more quickly than grass ever could. There's no easy draw waiting for her in Washington. There's no gentle re-entry into tour life after Wimbledon. There's just Alex Eala, a career-high ranking, an unforgettable win over a defending champion still fresh in everyone's memory. and a stacked field of major champions ready to test whether that Wimbledon breakthrough was the beginning of something much bigger, or a peak she'll have to fight hard to ever reach again. And beyond Washington, the road only gets heavier. The CD Open is just the opening move in a demanding North American hardcourt swing that continues through Toronto, Cincinnati, and ultimately the US Open itself, a stretch of tournaments that will say more about her long-term trajectory than any single Wimbledon run ever could. This is the part of a young athlete's career that separates a great story from a great career. Anyone can catch fire for 2 weeks. Sustaining that level, tournament after tournament, city after city, against opponent after opponent who now knows exactly what she's capable of, that's a different kind of test altogether. Either way, one thing is clear: the rise isn't pausing to celebrate, it's already moving on to the next battle. And for a player who has spent her entire career proving doubters wrong one tournament at a time, from a wildcard nobody watched in Miami to a seeded contender who beat a defending Wimbledon champion, the CD Open might be exactly the kind of challenge she's been waiting for. Not a victory lap, not a chance to rest on what she's already built. Just the next mountain waiting to be climbed, with the whole tennis world finally watching to see how high she can go.